Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Civil War. So I'm definitely talking about everything that's on your sheet and then some, because not everything on your homework is going to cover every piece about the Civil War. Okay, so when we're talking about the Civil War, we need to be looking at within the Confederacy how many people actually own slaves and then what the population of slaves is like. Not just in the Confederacy, but also the Union. So you can see in the original Confederate States, only 38% of people own slaves, and then 47% of the population are slaves. In our border states, 24% own slaves, 32% are slaves, and then in our northern or union states, 14% own slaves, and 15% of the population are slaves. Okay, so this just gives you a general breakdown, because whenever we think of the Civil War, like, yes, everyone in the South is fighting for the right of slavery. That's not why your average person was fighting. They were fighting because they were believing in states' rights, and that's what they were fighting for. Because if you don't own a slave, why are you going to fight a war for it? Is basically what you got to think about. Okay, so they're going to set some goals when they first get established. You're going to have in 1861 Jefferson Davis, who is the president of the Confederacy at this point. He is going to identify the Confederates' cause. Let's get this back. That's real close. With the Patriots' cause of 1776. So he's saying, hey, we're establishing our own independence, declaring sovereignty as a nation. Like, we just don't want to be a part of you anymore. That's it. He's going to simplify the South's strategy then, because all they have to do is defend their boundaries. All, simple. In order to achieve a victory, that they don't have to fight an offensive war. They just have to keep the territory they have, and then they can just become their own nation. That is the whole purpose of what they're doing. They are also going to ignore the strong anti-slavery sentiment of the European countries. These countries possibly could be giving them aid in the future because they depend upon them for cotton, but they're not about anything that Europe's doing. They are going to rule out any idea of gradual emancipation or anything else to do with slavery. That, like, it's a non-starter. It is what it is. The institution exists as it does in the South, and that's how it will be all the way till the end of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln is going to say that this is rejecting the idea of representative government. He's like, y'all had your time. You have people in the government. Like, you had representation here. It's not my fault that, like, things didn't go down exactly how you want it. Like, that's how it goes. He's like, don't be a sore loser, pretty much. And he's going to say we need to crush this rebellion, that these are states that are part of our country that just need to be brought back into the fold, that they are rebelling. It's not okay. We have to put the Union back together. And he's going to reject the idea of a peaceful persuasion. He's like, these people be crazy. They want their own country. We can't reason with them. The whole economic sanctions and blockades and whatever clearly isn't working. So we need to be aggressive in restoring the Union. So passionate. So the war is actually going to begin at this point. Northerners are going to join the war effort quickly. Ohio is going to be asked to provide 13 regiments, and they provide 20. People are very passionate about this. The Northern Democrats are going to support Lincoln because, yes, there are still Democrats in the North at this point. Remember, Democrats are your conservatives, largely in the South, and your Republicans are your liberals, largely in the North. Lincoln's going to call for 75,000 militiamen to be serving for 90 days. Everyone, both in the North and the South, thinks this is going to be a short, sweet war, that, everything's really starting off in April. Don't worry, it's fine. We'll be home for Christmas. Doesn't happen that way at all. The decision of the states in the border states is going to be crucial. Our border states include Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. So they're going to count for 2/3 of the whites in the slaveholding states. Virginia is going to side with the Confederacy, as does Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina. In northwestern Virginia, though, yeoman farmers, or small farmers, are going to break away and become part of the Union, and they're going to be admitted as what's known as West Virginia. What? That's how it all gets started, in case you didn't know. Delaware and Missouri are going to side with the Union, and Maryland is going to be occupied by and secured by Unionists, and they're going to seize the state's government. Oops. And they're going to negotiate to be a part of the Union. Kentucky is going to keep in negotiations with the Union, and so they will be established as a border state. The Union is going to then start thrusting towards Richmond, which is the capital of the newly founded Confederate States. Lincoln is going to reject the idea of peaceful persuasion, like I said, and he's going to start off with an aggressive campaign. So he's going to hope to strike quickly at the Confederates in Richmond, and that's just going to end the rebellion, right? Just nip it in the bud. But there's going to be an attack at Manassas, Bull Run, and that's going to lead to panic among the Union soldiers who are going to retreat. Oops. And the Union's going to enlist 1 million more men to serve for 3 years. Oh, guess everyone's not coming home in time for Christmas. In 1862, George McClellan, oh man, what a guy. He's gonna, we'll talk about him more later, but he's a general at this point, and like Lincoln hires him, fires him, hires him, fires him, hires him, fires him, and then he's like, seriously, you're awful, please don't ever come back. Anyways, George McClellan is gonna launch a major assault on the Army of the Potomac in 1862, but the Confederates are gonna fight back, and the war continues. Richmond's still secure. That did not go as planned at all. We're like, we're march right down to Richmond, no big deal, you know, it'll be over before we know it. It didn't happen. Bull Run happened. Then the Confederate States, General Lee, extremely talented general. He is from Virginia, very much, you know, a Southern supporter, but very much going to be the major linchpin to the Confederate States and their early victories here in the Civil War. Anyways, he's going to go on the offensive, not a defensive war anymore, and he's going to rout the Union troops into the Second Battle of Bull Run in 1862. He's going to head north and into western Maryland, and the delays on the Union side are going to keep Lee moving towards Antietam, and this is going to be extremely high in Union casualties. It's very extremely savage warfare. They talk about how the creeks and the rivers run with blood the day after the battle. It's going to occur September 17th, 1862. It remains still the bloodiest day in U.S. history, our military history. 4,800 and 18,500 are going to be wounded. 3,000 of those later are going to be dead. Because of Lee's retreat, Lincoln's going to claim a victory, but at a very high cost, right? There are lots of people who are going to die. Then they're going to continue to the Mississippi Valley. The Union's going to have success in the Midwest, gaining Tennessee and Mississippi rivers. The Union naval forces are going to be commanded by David G. Farragut, and it's going to strike the Confederacy from the Gulf of Mexico and capture the southern financial city and largest city of New Orleans. They're going to take control of 1,500 plantations, 50,000 slaves. Workers in some of these plantations are going to loot their owners' mansions and refuse to labor unless they're paid wages. The Union victories are going to significantly undermine the Confederate strength in the Mississippi River Valley. So that's a dub. Anyways, so this is just showing you those early movements of those early battles. Here you have Bull Run, and then up here you have Antietam, which you all can visit. If you've never been there, I highly recommend. It's very interesting to go there. And that's just showing you the movement forward. Okay, so realizing this isn't going to be a short and sweet war, and all the casualties, Bull Run, Second Bull Run, Antietam, and our fighting in the Mississippi Valley, Abraham Lincoln says, we're in it for the long haul. We gotta pace ourselves, and we have to commit to what's called total war. That we need to mobilize all of our society's resources to help this war. So that means the economy, that means politically, that means culturally. Now you're gonna get everyone on the same page to wanting to fight the war, that you are going to have the government behind and supporting the war, and that you're also going to help the economy every way you can in helping the war. This is a picture from World War II. Very famously in World War II, they are going to be champions of mobilizing the economy for the war effort. And we'll talk about that more obviously when we get there. But just, you know, telling people what they're going to make and how they're going to make it and what you need, and really just helping everything you can along the way in order to best mobilize your society. One of those things is going to be the military draft. Military draft is all men. After you turn 18, you are going to have to, within 3 to 6 months, I can't quite remember, are going to have to register for the military draft unless you are deemed unfit for another reason. And you will register, and if the country ever needs it, they'll call upon you, and your birthday will be given a number. They'll draw numbers, famously like they did in Vietnam. And then they'll call you up for the draft. Drafts are going to happen on both sides during the Civil War. Initially, people, though, are like super patriotic. They're going to have eager volunteers. But then when those early battles happen and the death toll is increasing, people are like, how about I don't enlist? Like, I have better things to do here at home. I have a family to provide for. I have a farm to care for. I have a job to work, whatever it might be. April 1862, so about a year in, the Confederate States of America are going to impose the first draft in U.S. history. The existing soldiers, if you're already part of it, are going to serve the duration of the war. Whew, is that what you counted yourself in for? Too bad it is now. And men ages 18 to 35 are going to serve for 3 years. And that's going to increase to 45 years of age in September 1860, just a few months later. That will change. The South draft is going to have 2 controversial loopholes, though. That if you have 20 slaves that you can supply to the effort, 1 white man is going to be exempt. Seems like a rich man's thing. Secondly, men who can hire as substitutes don't have to go. Also seems like a rich man's thing. Intriguing. That's going to be terrible for later. The Union is going to tax those who refuse to serve or sympathize with the Confederate States of America. They're also going to suspend habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is your right to a trial by jury. And they're going to imprison about 15,000 Southern sympathizers without trial. Northerners are going to provide a substitute or pay a fee to not fight. Also seemed like a rich man's thing. And that's going to end really badly in New York City mostly. So the Enrollment Act of 1863 in the North is going to lead to immigrants refusing to serve because they're like, I don't want to serve. I don't want to die in this war. And New York City is going to have draft riots. It's mostly going to be Irish and German workers. And during that riot, Black workers are going to be lynched, meaning hanged, and harassed because they feel like this is their problem, that they started this whole business, this whole nonsensory in their idea. In 1861, U.S. Sanitary Commission is going to be established in New York, and that's going to aid for the care of soldiers on the battlefield and in Union hospitals. And that is going to create new industries because there's so much death. You see things like embalming and different cultural rituals, because it took a while for the bodies to get back to the families from the battlefield. Okay. Women in the wartime. About 200,000 women are going to volunteer for the Sanitary Commission, what I just talked about, of aiding what they can in battle. And the Freedmen's Aid Society, they're going to nurse family members. They're going to work as paid nurses, clerks, and factory operatives. Dorothea Dix, if you remember her from our Antebellum Reformers Convocation, she's going to be named superintendent of female nurses. Women are going to take over farm tasks, fill in jobs in schools and offices, work as spies, sometimes soldiers dressing in disguise, and scouts, they're just working as a nurse. So they're going to be filling in different roles that they traditionally were excluded from because men are off fighting in war, so someone has to fill the gaps, and women are the ones left behind to do so. Okay, so this is just showing you the general progression as we move forward, 1861 into 1862. Okay, King Cotton. So the South is going to be the leading export in America for cotton. And that's going to be a crucial staple in their economy. In order for them to get money from that to purchase clothes, boots, blankets, and weapons from abroad for their troops. Ooh, that's not good to depend upon other people for money, because it never ever works out in history. Okay, so they're going to see it as a diplomatic weapon to persuade the French and the British to assist them. They're like, hey, listen, we got this stuff you want, help us out. And so they kind of are helping them out, just not like in huge ways, in small little bits here and there. The British had found new sources of cotton in India and Egypt, though, which they took over and colonized. Don't think they're like nice and like, I'm gonna trade with you. It's like, we own you now. Britain's insulting right now. So the South is going to resort to coercion then. They're going to leave economic matters to the state governments. And eventually they're going to build and operate shipyards, armories, textile mills, but then they have to start commandeering food, coal, iron, copper, lead, all of that because they need it. Oh, someone's at my door. Okay, so anyways, like I was saying, the Confederate States of America is going to be reluctant to tax slaves and cotton, because they're like, this is like a whole piece of frustration that led to the frustration of us getting established. So they're going to pay 60% of its war cost by printing more money, and that's going to lead to massive price inflations as well as food rioting, things you don't want to be happening in a country during wartime. So northern industry is going to be extremely superior to that of the south. They're going to have more output. They're going to have, so that's a good thing because it means you're making more goods and so you're able to make more money or supply the war effort. 2/3 of the railroads are going to be in the north. 2/3 of the population are going to be in the north. The Southerners are going to hope to trade cotton for much needed supplies. Like I already said, that's just not going to entirely work out. Congress is going to enact a non-mercantilist program of government that's going to assist economic development. So they're going to impose high tariffs. They're going to offer free land to farmers with the Homestead Act. They're going to close local banks. They're going to force states and people to accept federal charters and regulations, really pulling through that federal control. They're going to make plans for a transcontinental railroad connecting the east to the west, all the way from over here to California. They're going to make plans, sorry, I already said that. The industries are going to grow to feed and clothe those soldiers. And then the Union is going to spending is going to increase dramatically, but they are going to introduce paper currency in 1862. So like I said, you see these major differences occurring with factories, commodity, railroad, and population. For farm acreage, you're going to see the west is going to be a lot of this here, but that is going to increase their output. All right, debt to GDP, United States, you're going to see that that's going up during this time frame. Okay, contraband. So these are going to be abolitionists that are going to demand for emancipation as part of the war effort. Slaves are going to escape to Union armies, and they're going to be called contrabands of war. The Confiscation Act of 1861 is going to authorize the seizure of property using to support the rebellion. So that would be slaves to the eyes of the South. So fair game, we can take them and make them free. The Radical Republicans are going to work for legislation that is going to end slavery in the rebellious states and outlaw slavery in other federal territories. And that's just showing you slaves trying to escape to freedom. So these Radical Republicans, they're going to include people like Charles Sumner, that guy we talked about that got beaten by the cane, by a cane, not a guy with a cane, and Thaddeus Stevens. These are people that are going to call for a war that ends slavery all the way from the beginning. Think of them as liberals during this time frame. They are going to be mostly Northerners, and that is going to be a major crux to what they believe, ending slavery. So that leads us to the Emancipation Proclamation. Initially, Abraham Lincoln is going to reject emancipation, freeing the slaves, as a war aim. But in August 1862, he's going to publicly link black freedom with the preservation of the Union. He realizes the two go together, and there's no denying it. Slavery is going to continue in those states that had not rebelled, like Maryland and Missouri. In areas occupied by Union armies, parts of Tennessee and western Virginia, southern Louisiana as well. Lincoln's going to call for emancipation as an act of justice. So he frees the slaves in the South, the place where he doesn't actually have power at this time through their eyes, but allows for slavery to continue in those occupied territories and the border states. So that's going to encourage a lot of Southern slaves to run away, but that also is going to, and fight in their own way, but that's also going to encourage those European countries that had been supporting the South to now feel really awkward to not support the South. Okay, so that leaves us to Vicksburg and Gettysburg. So General Grant is going to seek to split the Confederacy in two. He's going to achieve the surrender at Vicksburg. It's going to take regions of Louisiana. The slaves then are going to start deserting the region and moving elsewhere. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, July 1863. This is going to be a Union victory that's hard won. It's going to take 3 days. At the very end, 28,000 Confederate troops are going to be dead. 23,000 Union troops will be dead. And this is going to be the last effort of the Confederate Army to invade the North. After this will be on the retreat and the defensive. And this is going to increase the power of the Republican Party and its supporters of the war. So, another piece when we talk about the Civil War, you're going to see that many Northern whites initially are going to be offended by African Americans fighting for the Union. The Emancipation Proclamation, though, is going to change that public thinking on the issue. Northern whites are now going to accept blacks fighting and dying for their cause. In 1863, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, which we'll learn all about when you come in and watch this fantastic movie on December 13th, they are going to gain notoriety for the heroic and costly attack on Fort Wagner. And they're going to be critical in changing the perspective on African American soldiers. Discrimination is going to be widespread, but changes to their pay will be achieved after that point. So, General Ulysses S. Grant is going to take charge and command in March of 1864, and he's going to want a new strategy, as deemed by Lincoln. Grant is going to focus not just on the battles, but on mobilization against Southern society disruption. I'll talk about that more in just a minute. He's going to order 2 offensives. Grant is personally going to take charge of the Army of the Potomac and is going to seek to destroy Lee's forces in Virginia. That is his sole purpose and existence of what he's doing at this point. He's going to order General William Sherman, talk about him more in a minute too, to invade Georgia and take Atlanta. There's going to be a psychological toll of fighting, though, that there's been enormous losses on both sides. Morale is declining because people don't like fighting war for a long time. Soldiers are deserting to go home. You're going to have trench warfare starting, that people are digging trenches and entrenching themselves until you can't move anywhere. That'll be a problem in World War I. And then you're going to have the Scorched Earth campaign that's going to reveal the desperation to end the war. Talk about that right now. Okay. So the Scorched Earth campaign, General Grant is going to give the orders to everyone and say, hey, your job is to literally and figuratively burn the earth you come across in the South. That everything you see that is positive and good, destroy it, set it on fire, take it, kill it, whatever it is, make them beg for mercy and want this to end. So, election of 1864. So, things just continue on as normal in a democracy, so that means there has to be another presidential election, right? Like, he got elected in 1860, it's been 4 years. So, some Republicans are going to try to block the nomination of Lincoln. They will be rebuffed, though. They will argue, Lincoln's use of the Emancipation Proclamation and how all these pieces have come together. The Democrats in the North, though, are going to nominate General George McClellan. Look, we know that guy. And he's not the most popular at all because he was kind of an incompetent general during the Civil War. Watch, you're going to go home and say that to your parents, and then they'll be like, I don't think that at all. Like, he did some good things, trust me, that were, positive towards the war, but, there was a lot of infighting between McClellan and Lincoln and not following of orders and just all that. Anyways, the Democratic Party in the North is going to be split between the War Democrats and the Peace Democrats, just like their name suggests. The War Democrats are going to want to continue fighting to end the rebellion. Peace Democrats are going to want to end hostilities and negotiate a peace. With a split party, and because Abraham Lincoln is awesome, he is going to win the election of 1864. Okay, General Sherman. What a guy. So, when people talk about their experience with General Sherman, they talk about what a calculated and just high-strung and just brutal man he was. And he's very famous for saying, when one nation is at war with another, all of the people of one are enemies of the other. So basically, everyone in the South and the Confederacy is our enemy. If you stand with them and not with us, you're against us. And that's going to come into this concept of hard war, that we will fight everywhere, everyone, that we have to make this end. So that brings us to the March to the Sea. After taking control of Atlanta, we burn the city down. Abraham Lincoln is going to promise the war is going to continue. He's like, it's nice that your city burnt down, but if you're not surrendering, this is still going to happen. And the National Union Party is going to label the Peace Democrats as copperheads, poisonous snakes trying to poison the Union. So like I said, he's going to win election in 1864. Maryland and Missouri are going to change their state constitutions to call for emancipation. Woo! So, General Sherman, he's going to be commanding the Union Army of the Tennessee. And he is going to move south with his army, and he's going to demolish anything in his path. This is a painting or drawing description of it. They're going to set things on fire. They're going to set fields on fire. They're going to tear up railroads. They're going to take everything they come across. Like literally everything they're just destroying. Many Confederate soldiers are going to be demoralized by this point, and they're going to be abandoning the war effort. They're going to treat him as a savior by Georgia's black population. And they're going to issue a special field order number 15 that sets aside 400,000 acres of land for the use. Someone's calling me. For the use of freedmen. They're going to invade South Carolina, and they're going to meet up in the North Carolina, to fight against General Lee. Wow. So at this point, as they're going to the sea, marching to the sea, and just destroying everything, the small farmers, the small average person in the Confederate States who has been, helping the war effort, by this point is pretty frustrated. They're pretty over it. They want to leave. They want the war to be over, and this is just going to play upon that and cause a lot of them to either abandon the war or to call for surrender. Class resentment is going to continue, and the Confederate States are going to be weakened to the point where General Lee is going to surrender at the Appomattox, I can never say it, courthouse in Virginia. So that leads us to the land that we gained at different points during the war. That 1865, the war will finally be over, and we can move forward. Sorry, there's a thing on my screen. Move forward as a nation. And that's what we're talking about next, is Reconstruction. How do we put the whole nation back together after we all were just fighting and killing each other? How do we move forward together as a union? If you have questions, please don't hesitate to come see me or to put them in the question box. Hope you enjoyed this beautiful lecture.